everyone, and thank you for joining us again on the Seafood Matters podcast. You can help the series by pressing subscribe and share it with family and friends. Joining us today is CJ Jackson. CJ runs the Seafood Training School in London, which used to be called the Billingsgate Seafood School. Hello, CJ. Welcome back to Seafood Matters.
Good morning, Jim. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to have an opportunity to talk to you again.
Thank you. Well, I feel the same. Before we get going, please tell us about your career and the Great British Seafood Revival. Tell us what spark kicked this book off for you.
Well, as you know, I've been working in the seafood industry for a long time, but the absolute spark for me with this particular book was a group of 9-year-olds coming to see me at Billingsgate Market. And they were coming to learn about fish, and I very often ask them what fish they eat. There's always going to be a few non-fish eaters. And they all looked very blankly at me, and I said, do you know the names of any fish? And the only ones they could tell me about were cod, haddock, salmon, canned tuna, and with a bit of prompting, they could tell me about prawns. And this really shocked me because 10 years ago, if I'd asked the same question to a similar group, they were much more savvy. And then I started working backwards to work out why they don't know so much. And that age group, they don't have a big shopping experience. They might go to a couple of the major retailers who no longer have a wet fish counter, and they see things in pre-pack. So it really worried me because I'm thinking, if these children now, what's going to be like in 10 years' time or 20 years' time when they're also talking to their own family about eating seafood. So that was my spark.
That's almost like the one they did in America. And the question was to the children, where does seafood come from? And I think the majority said the supermarket.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what their understanding is. And, I then introduce those children to some very simple fish. A lot of them have never seen a whole fish because everything always comes in packs now. And they're absolutely, it's wonderful to see such enthusiasm when they see a whole mackerel, say, or a whole plaice, and they get to touch it. My favorite one was showing them a bag of mussels. And one of the girls went, "Oh, CJ, they're alive." And I went, "Yes, they are." And she said, "I saw its lips moving," which were the shells closing. And so it's lovely to be able to talk to them, but it really bothered me. Just that we seem to be further and further away, and I think we're going to get further and further away. So there's so many good things going on in the industry, so many good things, and I'm so excited about it.
You're such an enthusiastic person. I could feel that enthusiasm myself and excitement. It's brilliant.
Well, I'm very excited. So when we thought about the book, it's really aimed at people who don't necessarily buy fish very often. And it's how we can encourage people to look at fish as an offering. And it's going to require quite a lot of investigating if somebody wants to use the book, because some of those fish you'd have to go looking for and you'd have to look online to find out where to buy them. But they're landed in the UK, and I think it's important that we highlight that. So,
when you're talking about the reaction from children, it reminds me, I was doing a demonstration at one of our schools up here. I did it on purpose because I wanted the reaction, I have to admit. But I took fish straight off the market in Scrabster. They were really fresh. And I laid them out on my presentation table. And I ran, you know exactly what I'm saying here, CJ. I ran my finger from the head to the tail and licked my finger.
Oh, I should try that one. That's a good one.
I licked my finger. The reaction, they were just horrified, and you could see them screwing up their faces and saying to each other, "Oh, look what he just did. Look what he just did." And I just tried to be as cool, calm, and collective as I could. And I said, "Look, I know exactly where this fish came from, right from where it was caught until it's on this table. I know how it's been handled." I said, "It's got its own natural slime, which looks after the fish better than we can. And I said, so I have no problems putting that in my mouth. I says, but the fast food joints that you lot go into, I says, I would never put anything in my mouth from there.
Right. And well, what was their reaction as a matter of interest?
Nothing. They pulled back because they were definitely going to go into McDonald's rather than suck the slime off a cod.
Yes. Very good.
Sorry, I hope I didn't take
No,
you
no,
off
that's great.
your
That's great.
stride there. Because I was going to ask you anyway, there's certainly nobody that understands British seafood better than CJ Jackson. So tell us, how do you see the book fitting into the story of British seafood? And are you rediscovering lost traditions or celebrating what's already been here?
Well, it's really interesting because I got together with Steve Lee, who's a photographer on this book, and he has created the most beautiful images. And I said to him, there's an opportunity to promote some of the underutilized fish. That's where the idea came from. And how do we get people eating a little bit more of it? It's always, and I have people coming in to see me at Billingsgate. I'm still running classes there. And I'm about to launch a new website promoting the classes. And these are, informed adults, but they're so nervous about cooking fish and don't know what to choose. None of them have prepared it. I like to get them to prepare fish. They get, once you've prepared something and you've handled it, it's the same with children, you're much more likely to enjoy cooking it. So it's that whole thing. But there's so much stuff going on around the UK where you've got the fabulous Mike Warner, who promotes brilliantly. He's close to the coalface. And I think that inspired me to think I've got to get out of Billingsgate and work around the country and actually go and see for myself where things are landed. So Mike, Mike Warner, he's a
Very well.
chap.
Very
And I've
well.
done some work with him in the past. I've got a huge amount of respect for him. And he's got a new project called Key Connections, where he's taking groups of chefs and interested people down to some of the harbour and actually seeing boats coming in, getting them interacting with fishermen. And so one of my first trips was to go with Steve. We went down to Newlyn and we did a pilot of Mike's Key Connections. And he introduced to us to a chap who has a fabulous boat. And we were down in Newlyn. We went around the market. We went to see a few businesses. We went to see some fishmongers down there. And I got a real feeling for what was happening, absolutely coalface in the same way that Mike does. I got a contact down there, Gus Caslake from a Seafish. He's down there working closely with the fishermen. I met a lady called Elaine. She works at the fishmongers down there. She's a master fishmonger like herself. So it was actually good, really good now to actually, put your hand in somebody's hand and saying, really nice to meet you. Interestingly, a lot of the merchants from Billingsgate have never been on these trips. And they said, I'd love to go to Newlyn, never been. And I'm thinking it was really important to talk to these people and actually understand what their challenges are. We hear about it all the time. And we'd arranged for this boat from Crystal Sea to come in. We got wonderful sort of photographs of it coming into Newlyn. I had an opportunity to go into the hold, which I'd never done before. And there was a huge box of megrim, which was one of the species of fish that I really wanted to promote. Call it Cornish sole down there. My grandmother would have tucked into that with no problem at all. McFisheries, the old-fashioned fishmonger, closed at the end of the 1970s. They had 80 years of promoting and selling UK product. And megrim was featured quite regularly in their year calendar books. So I wanted to go down and see where it was landed, talk to the fishermen, get a real experience of going down in the hold. There's a hilarious photograph that Steve took of me going into the hold with a hard hat on. And I sent it to my husband and said, I've stowed away. I'll be back in a few weeks, because they were turning around and going back out to sea. So it was really, really interesting. And I said, what would you like me to promote? What are you saying? And they said, we've got bluefin tuna fishery down here, which we're beginning to see a lot of. So that was exciting. Andrew Pascoe, who's down there, he's another chap I met, hugely enthusiastic. He was a shellfisherman, and now he still does that, but he's also got bluefin fishery. And so it was great to be able to write that. They were telling me, could I promote spurdock, which we sell as rock salmon in the UK? And one of those fish, certainly bluefin tuna and spur dog were fish that we've been probably told to hold back on buying just purely because of sustain issues. But they're landing it. It's as of the moment they're landing it. They've got a quota for it, certainly for the bluefin. And it was really exciting to think just grasp a species that we've been a bit cautious about. And species that we don't necessarily get. You'd never see that bluefin tuna at Billingsgate. It's going to go it'll go to a specific and special market. But it was fascinating, and and I've got I think I've got a fairly good understanding of species landed into the UK and abroad. But adding to that knowledge, I came with a head full, like a full file of new information, and I was keen to try and get it down into the book and get it promoted. And that was just one trip. So Steve and I also visited Northern Ireland. A lady called Lynn Gilmore, Dr. Lynn Gilmore. She used to work for Seafish. She organised a visit over there. I was very keen to go and see Glenarm Farm salmon. And there's also wonderful fishmongers in Belfast called Ewing's, and they have a smokehouse at the back, and they have a wet fish shop. And it was just going out and talking to new people. So I came back full of excitement and enthusiasm for what I'd seen over there. Wonderful to see Glenarm salmon. Unfortunately, we couldn't go and see the pens because the weather was bad. So that was one of the other trips. And then we've hopped around the UK. And I think we were told at Christmas we only had 9 or 8 months to get this book complete. And that was all the photographs, which just displayed. There's over 150 images in the new book. They're absolutely beautiful. Steve Lee is a very, very talented, creative photographer. And the book's stuffed full of images of the coast, images of fish, images of people, images of fish markets, lots of images of me with my traditional bandana talking to different people. So that's basically, you can hear I'm getting all excited about it now. That's where it all started. I'm very happy to share more of where we've been because I've just come back so excited with what I've seen that's being done in the industry. But how do we go taking that industry and that knowledge and the great knowledge that's being shared, but how do we get that into my kids, my 9-year-old kids that have only seen a piece of cod and possibly not even UK landed cod. It'll probably be Icelandic, beautiful quality, of course. But how do we get to that next stage? We export 80% of our species, great market with the fishermen, but every single fisherman I spoke to said they'd love to see the UK public buying a little bit more UK landed product. So that was where I'm coming from. I could go on for hours, as you know.
I know CJ well enough. I know that. But one of the things that you've just triggered with me, I feel, from talking to all that people, do you not think there's a disjoint and there should be more joined up thinking between the catching sector, the authorities, and the market on the shore side? And there's a perfect example with the spur dogs. There was a lot of dogs landed. I had a contract with the biggest dogfish, as we called them, spur dogs, handler in the world. That was stopped because it was classed as a shark and the fishery was stopped. And then now we've got it that the boats, they're being allowed to land them again, and their nets are full of them, and they can't get a market for them.
No, because we stopped eating them. It's like herrings.
That's right.
We had a process of not eating them, and therefore we've lost the tradition, and we've lost the excitement, and we've lost the taste for them. And I think herring was one fish I'd have loved to put into the book, but I couldn't find a shoal that was being caught at the time, and because we were only doing our book for the sort of photographs the first 6 months of the year, there was nobody landing anything. But it's such a key species, and it's so delicious. I don't know if you know this, but the first fish finger that was ever made was made with herring. And when the company and they know who they are, made the herring fish finger, they thought they better benchmark it back in the 1950s. So what did? They benchmarked it with cod, and everybody loved the cod. So the herring was pushed to one side. And I always think now that if they'd gone down the route of using that herring, look at the nation's health. Everybody would be tucking into herring fish fingers and not think anything of it. And they were absolutely delicious. I remember being given one to try, and I thought, goodness me, we've lost this here. Mike was promoting this week. He had some photographs of some of the silver darlings, or lovely species of fish, that we're catching off the East Coast. And, a lot of it goes to penguin food. for 5p a kilo because we just lost the market for it. There used to be, I go down and work in Hastings a bit, and there used to be a big herring fair there in November, and they used to have big displays of them, and there was a big focus. And I was in Hastings recently, and the fishermen said, could we reinstigate that? And I said, well, it would be great, but we'd have to really encourage people to try it because we've lost the taste for it, lost the taste for spur dog, lost the taste a lot for things like skates and rays. Ray was another one. Am I all right to gas on? You know what I'm like.
No, you keep going.
I did a project last year, which again is another reason this spurred me on, excuse the expression, the pun there. But I went with Seafish up to Cumbria and Whitehaven, not Newhaven, Whitehaven and Maryport, looking at the fishermen who were landing large quantities of thornback rays, or thornies, as they call them. And they were landing them. They were taking the wings off. They were taking the knobs or the cheeks out, selling into market. And there wasn't a big market for them. So they were getting tiny amount of money for their ray wings. And so I did a whole filming, the whole thing with one of their team, looking at who buys it. They sold it at Fleetwood Market for pence, not even over £1. It was all winged, the skins had come off, and they were wanting to work out how they could create a new market. What they really need is a big celebrity chef to go, look what I've got. And it might have that sort of impact, with chefs and things. Locally, they eat it. I went from catching the fish or seeing the fish landed in Maryport. I followed it down with the team from Seafish to Fleetwood. And I went into Midland Fish there. Really great group. This is another group of people that I'm passionate about, sort of excited for them. And I went and worked with one of their blockmen, lovely guy called George, and he put me in my salad, put me in an apron, managed to get me a stool because I'm not tall enough to reach up to their block work, and showed me how to take the wings and the cheeks out of this thornback. And then we skinned it, and the challenges of taking the skin off those, because they've got those little spiny buttons, they call them, and trying to get those off, and then selling it at market. So from having taken the wings and the cheeks out, I followed it all the way down to Billingsgate, and then I took it into the school and we cooked it. And I had a young influencer in there with me, a chap called Max Burns, who also does some work with me when we go to China with Seafish. And he'd never eaten it before. And he said, I can see this on our restaurant menu. So it's just trying to introduce the idea of eating these things again, because there's loads of these fish around. We need to get our British public, I think, and I'm sure everybody thinks it'd be great to see the great British public eating a little bit more of our landed species that we're forgetting about. So that was another. Steve and I also went back up to Fleetwood to film up there with Midland and another first fish business up there. We all went over to Wales. We've done Northern Ireland. We did obviously a big trip to Scotland, which was very exciting. So having started out thinking we must promote Safe or Coley. We must promote Megrim. We must promote thornback rays. What are we going to do with spur dogs? And from then, there was an opportunity for this book to do so much more. And I had Steve and I had a wonderful trip to visit a guy in Fife who is a Kiwi. He is married to a Scottish lady. They've got a family here. And he is a forager. And he took us out onto the coast in Fife to forage for seaweeds. And that was incredible. It's not fish, but it's of the sea, and sea chap, they normally call it. And we've actually managed to get a chapter about the sea chap and the seaweeds with Jason's expertise. He runs these fabulous foraging programs. And that was and one of those visits, like a holiday, that is etched on my mind now and was an extraordinary experience. In the same way, we also thought we must have canned fish or tinned fish in this book. So we went up to the one big commercial cannery, which is the International Fish Canners in Fraserburgh. And we had a fabulous tour there with their development chef who explained all the intricacies about how you can get a fish into a can and keep the good shelf life on that fish. It's extraordinary. We saw mackerel and we saw Cornish sardines being canned. And we couldn't take any photographs of the operation. That's obviously fair enough. It's confidential. But having been there, we then came back to Steve's studio in London and I created lots of recipes around those different species. and created recipes in his studio. So every single recipe in the book has got a photograph. So that was another great one. We then thought we must do farmed fish, and there was quite a bit of, I suppose, a bit of sort of hesitation from the publishers about farm fish. And I said, we've got to understand that over 50% plus 50% of what we eat now is farmed, and a lot of people are suspicious of it. Whereas there's such good things going on in the farming industry. So we chose to do a farmed salmon. We didn't have enough time to do a lot of the Scottish farms, but there's places like Loch Duart, all of those fabulous businesses. We did Glenarm, Northern Ireland. We then went down to Chalk Stream Trout in Romsey and saw the Chalk Stream Trout and the fishery down there. And out of everything we did, I think that was Steve's favourite visit. It's so peaceful, and we saw them they're not allowed to handle the fish. I didn't know that when they take a trout out of the water, I think 15 seconds is about as much as they're allowed to hold the fish. They have to put it back in the water. So all of these things are done in so carefully. And then we thought we must catch our own. So we went on a couple of fishing trips to catch some trout, and I went beach fishing in Hastings to catch my own. So we've almost done a sort of trip round looking at all these different places. Grimsby was on the map, obviously. That's a very key one. Smoked fish, we went to Alfred Enderby in Grimsby, which was one run by the Patrick Salmon. He's so excited. I got very excited. When I'm around somebody who's passionate about their products and about the species, I get completely over the top. I could see Steve. In fact, Steve wasn't with me on that day, but everybody was telling me to calm down because I was getting just so excited seeing somebody so proud of their product. And it is a fabulous product. So we went to Peterhead, obviously. We did Fraserburgh. We went over to Inverness. And then we then went down to Fife. And then on a separate trip about 2 weeks later, Mike and I went back to Tarbert. There's a Tarbert Seafood Festival there with Kenny McNabb. And we spent a bit of time with him. That had been set up by Mike, promoting all the fabulous shellfish and product that they land there. That was just so exciting. I'm just full of it. And I then had to come back and start working on copy. The only problem with this, though, is that I was only given 340 words per species, and I can probably cover that just in talking how to choose it rather than just prepare it and cook it. So I've got a lot of how I felt about the species and the tricks into this book. But, if an industry person looks at it, they'll say, why doesn't she say this and why doesn't she say that? Just in that room. As it was, I wanted to do a map of where we've been, and they created a beautiful map of the UK, looking at Scotland and all the big ports, Scotland, England, Wales, obviously very important. We did a Welsh trip too, and Northern Ireland. But I wish really I'd been given another 5 years and been given the finances, because I had a little bit of money from Fishmongers Company. Seafood Scotland were great. They supported this a bit financially for doing our trips. But the rest of it was basically us giving our time. And it was hugely self-indulgent. But I've come back just brimming with excitement about the industry and wanting to try and get people to eat a bit more seafood. That's what I've been doing all these years. So there's my hot on the heels. I'm expecting the first copy of the book to arrive today. And I've seen it. They've shown it to me on a video. And I can't believe they've actually created this book and they're selling it for £25. It's just packed full of British coasts, people, the fish. And I'm hoping that it's just going to also, you open up the book and you get a feeling that we have a wonderful fishing industry in the country. And sorry, you did ask me about the joined up speaking. Joined up is the biggest issue. We saw all these different things, but, who's speaking to who? And, you have big shakers and movers. You've got the Mike Cohen from the National Federation of Fishermen. He very kindly wrote a foreword. I think Merlin Unwin asked him to do that. And, he's there supporting all of his fishermen. And, a fisherman goes out to sea, risks life and limb to get out there to bring all this product in. There's a market for it. They're selling it abroad. But wouldn't it be lovely to get the UK going back to McFisheries days and embracing a little bit more of the species we've got?
McFisheries was a wonderful company to work for. I did a lot. I contracted boats direct on contract, supplying them. And they were just fantastic to work with.
Well, that was my other spark. You're talking about my children, but I've got a lot of. I never knew my grandmother, and she was widowed very young. She was a doctor, and in her collection of bits and pieces, I got these three McFishery's books from the 1930s, and they used to do a yearbook. I think they used to call it Housewife's Diary. I don't think housewives. Well, I'm not. I've got a house husband, and I'm a housewife, so we do lots of things like that. But um, they have a recipe for every day of the week in there. In those days, fishmongers also sold a bit of game, so and a bit of poultry as well. So you got recipes for rabbit, you got recipes for goose. My favourite was goose stuffed with bananas for Christmas in 1937, I think it was. But I picked up that book, and it was just full of all the species we wouldn't think twice about. We're eating it all the time, and it was on the counter. It was a pity when they closed. I think in their heyday they had over 300 shops just in London, and you've got the National Federation of Fishmongers now, and you've got some fabulous shops. One of the people I really my hands up, and I think she's fabulous, is Sue Lucas at the fish shop in Camberley. I mean, she is a powerhouse. It's great to see another woman focused in the industry here. And she's also a master fishmonger, and she's got the most unbelievable shop. But it would be great to see more of those and people seeing it as an industry. And of course, there's loads of challenges as to why it wouldn't happen. And a lot of me. Sorry, I'm
Sorry. No, I was just going to on you. I'm sorry for taking you off your run, but just going in exactly what you've been saying there, it saddens me to think when McFisheries were the biggest fishmonger in the country, I think it's now somebody like Tesco.
Well, they were promoting themselves as a bees fishmonger, but they don't have wet fish counters anymore, so you don't get that theatre. And I think
Right, okay.
that is the issue. Sainsbury's, I don't believe, have them. We've got Morrison's, Waitrose, and Booths. That was another one. I loved Booths counters up north. When we were up in sort of Lancashire, we went to a Booths supermarket. Oh, couldn't keep me away from that. It was a wonderful experience. And well-trained staff behind the counter, beautiful displays. There's people doing it. But my kids, from South London or Tower Hamlets, are never going to have that experience because they've got Asda. Asda no longer has a fish counter. You just get it in pre-pack. And, the more pre-pack we get, they're going to sell what they can sell, which is fair enough. But it's shrinking and shrinking. And I think, I just don't know how we can get it back on track until we lose the idea of fish altogether. And you're right, talking about America, they don't understand that the fish comes from the sea. And the one problem is, none of us see what's going on underneath the ocean, which is the other sustainability thing that we need to focus on, which I mentioned and covered in the book about how quotas are set and who's doing what to make sure that we are managing a sustainable seafood industry in the UK. But you can't see it. And, kids can go out to the country. Some of them have never seen a cow or a sheep before, but at least they are out there, and you can go 30 miles out of London and see them walking around in a field. We just don't get that same experience. We're just having to take things off the seabed and out they come. And, we're all gasp out of excitement when we see what comes out of our oceans.
Another thing that's sparking me thinking about as you're talking there, CJ, is even in my time, I can remember when I was younger, and not just a kid, I'm in my 70s now, but even when I was married, it was still a great tradition up here anyway, and I'm sure it was at least all over Scotland, but maybe spread further than that. Herring was obviously a big part of the fishery, and pretty much at the end of the season, just about this time of the year, they would salt it. Just when the roe and the melt was just at its best, they would salt it, give it 3 weeks or so, and every village hall would have a celebration. We called it a tatty and herring night. It was a tradition, and every village hall had one of them, the herring night. And the farming people would have the harvest home where they were celebrating the harvest. So, do you feel that, is that not right for good, wholesome, traditional industries and food? Celebrate it.
Absolutely celebrated. And, we do celebrate Harvest Festival. I'm doing a big lunch for Harvest. I think when we think about Harvest Festival, we don't necessarily think about, our protein. We think much more about what's growing in the field. But I think, we should celebrate it. And this was the other thing that was very noticeable was when I was traveling around, you would get locals buying. So I went to Seafish took me up to promote the Thornback race, but we went up to Maryport. They had a seafood festival, Best Taste of Cumbria, sometime in August. And I went up there with the team, the same team that we filmed the year before. And the boats landed. And right next to us was a fisherman who brought all his catch in and was selling it from basically the back of the boat next to us in Maryport Harbour. And there were queues and queues and queues of people wanting to buy it. So the enthusiasm is there. It's just accessing it. How do I get those to my kids in London? It's a challenging one. But so, locally people will go and buy. And I think and I think a lot of them say that it's become it's much easier to do it now since COVID because, fishermen, that was the only way they could get their fish out at sea was to sell it from the quay. So the boat selling it from the quay, I think are doing very well. And they had such a great range of product. Everything from small langoustines and scampi tails right the way through to thornback ray. They even had a couple of little turbot and brill and, a range of things. So, and gurnard, which I love working with. So lots of great products. So it wasn't just focused on one thing. So
where does British seafood stand today? Are we thriving, struggling, or somewhere in between?
I think, I'm not in the industry. I feel like I'm promoting it and selling it, but I think I've seen so much now. I think, you always asked about this whole thing about joined up thinking. I think we've got a very, very exciting industry. There are huge challenges set all the time. Very often about, there's big challenges to do with sustainability and types of fishing, what's good and what's not. But I think, what the other thing is, I was going to say about down in Cornwall, they had that big octopus bloom where they've got a big problem with octopus because the climate's changing and the water temperatures are changing. Therefore, they've got a lot of octopus this year who are cleaned out a lot of the pots that they would be catching smaller lobster and crab in. So there's lots of these things to be working with. But there's also, I still think we've got a very vibrant industry. And that's my understanding of it. And I think we need more support, or not me, but I think the industry could do with more support and more understanding the people that make all the powers and the decisions about things. Because, you need to send some of these ministers out on a boat for 3 days to go deep sea fishing with some of these fishermen and see what they're actually facing and the challenges they're facing. And I think it's a bit spread out. We've got all around the UK, we've seen it. I've had similar conversations with lots of different people. Wonderful product I'm seeing landed, and some of it goes to Billingsgate, a lot of it goes abroad. When I was in Newlyn, we saw a boat that come in with full of hake. They had the MMO there checking to make sure that everything was legal, which it was, and but it was all going back into a lorry and was going off to Spain. And there is a lot of hake. I saw hake in Aldi the other day. They had a ready meal with hake, and I was very excited about that. So, it's ready meals. That's another thing I was thinking about. The way of getting people to eat more seafood is putting it in ready meals. Because in the way we eat in the UK, certainly like little ones in London, we don't sit down and eat meals in the same way that we used to, I don't think. I have a son here at home who is in his early 20s. And he doesn't like necessarily the food that we like. So I'm always offering him different things. And I think we open up the fridge, take out different ingredients we're going to eat, but nobody very often sits and eats a whole meal together. It might be a Sunday lunch, but it's very, very sort of picky. And I think how we address that. So nutritionists need to get more involved in it. There's been a lot, I think, as an island nation, we've got great opportunities, and we need to make more of them.
I'm talking from afar, but obviously you're talking about Cornwall, and I'm in a very opposite end of the country. But what I see with the situation with octopus is, I just wonder if it's just a typical predator situation we've had in stock. We used to talk about whiting being a predator stock. and eat the baby cod and haddock and stuff. But my goodness, I've got to hand it to the Cornish. They turned up negative. If it was a negative, into a positive, because what a market they've created, and some of the boats are fishing better than they ever did.
Well, I think there's that, but there's also going to be some losers, and I think some of them who would have really found it challenging. So I think I sat in and listened to a conversation with the Shellfish Association of Great Britain a couple of weeks ago, and in that conversation, it was saying there were winners, but there are some losers as well. And I think the next question was, is this just a phenomenon for this year, or is it going to happen? And I think nobody knows. It's happened a few times over the last few decades. But it's been a big hit this time. And of course, there's lots of octopus on the menu. I've even got octopus in the book, actually, eating that. But, is it going to recover? And, it hit the crab and lobster market very hard down there. Interestingly, they said that octopus doesn't like spider crab. So that's one of the things I promoted in the book. And you get a decent sized spider crab. It's got to be big enough because you've got a lot of shell and not a lot of meat. But they seem to have fared better than things like brown crab and some of our lobsters. Larger species seem to have survived it. Larger crab and lobster. So winners and losers on that, I'd say. And I'm very, very sorry for people who've struggled.
With talking about that, what challenges or changes in the industry stood out for you while working on the book?
That's really interesting, because I think there's a whole thing about joined up conversations. But for me, the other thing that stood out is the fishermen and the people that are managing it and processing it being listened to. And they were saying that, there's somebody behind a desk making decisions about what's going to happen next year. And, and they're taking data. My understanding that they're dealing with data that was collected a while back to make decisions for next year. But what a lot of the fishermen said is that things happen so quickly. So you have doubt, like the Cornish issue with octopus, things change, and therefore understanding. I think one of the biggest things they would like to see is instant understanding and conversations with fishermen about what they're dealing with now and how the data. Looking back at old data, do you see what I'm trying to say? So things happen very quickly, and it's making decisions on what's happening quickly rather than having to go through loads of paperwork and the slow process of getting all that information to make decisions for next year. So that was one of the things. And I think, also getting the UK public, how do we get them to eat a little bit more of our fish? It's great to send it abroad. So, some of these people are making great money out of it, but there's a lot of costs involved in sending things abroad. And I think quite a lot of people would love to see us embracing it a bit more in the UK.
Did you see exciting innovations happening in sustainable fishing that gives you hope?
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness me. I think the most exciting thing, and I didn't see it, to be fair, because, I didn't get to Brixham, and I'll get my hands slapped over that one. We just didn't have time. Had such a short window. But there's a fantastic chap, Mike Bethet, who is one of my pinnacles. He's retired now, but he's involved still in lots of industry activity, and he's a great sustain guru. And he was telling me about the disco scallops, and this is particularly in Brixham. They found a way of harvesting scallops. You either dredge for them or you die for them, which one's very high impact. We've still got a lot of scallops out there, the high impact, but you've also got having to die for them. It actually adds a cost to it. So they're using these LED lights. There's a fishery down in Brixham where they're using LED lights on the pots. And the disco part is that scallops are getting into the pot because they're attracted by the lights. What a great story, and there was things like that. And there's so many different innovations coming on. And how do we say to the public, this is so exciting about what's happening in the industry with lots of different things. Mike would be the person to talk about that because, he's going on his key connections this week down to Newlyn. But there are things, and I think that was the one that I thought was the best. I also got very excited about bluefin tuna. And, water's warming, the fish are coming in here, and I saw some wonderful videos, and I've seen quite a few fishmongers, certainly Sue at the fish shop in Camberley. She's been selling bluefin tuna, and it's on the menu. I've seen lots of it on the internet, which is great, high end and people who are interested in eating that sort of thing. But that's not going to help my little ones who have got a can of tuna, MSC certified, which is great, and that's going to be their understanding of it. So it would be great to Do you know, tuna is a really interesting one because I think canned tuna is very strongly flavoured, and it's a little bit strongly flavoured to me. I don't actually like it very much. My son loves it, and he said he didn't like fish, but it's the most strongly flavoured of the lot. That's just a aside and a side comment.
Was there a story or person you met that really stuck with you while writing this book? There obviously sounds a few.
I'm brimming with them all. I could tell you, there's just everybody I spoke to was so excited about their projects and what they were doing and the quality of product they were dealing with. Well, Mike, obviously, but I know him. He's a good friend, and I've got a huge amount of respect for him. I think Andrew Pascoe. I always find my things that stand out. I'm sort of almost slightly fall in love with somebody when they start talking about. Don't tell my husband that. But when they start talking with passion and knowledge about a subject, I think Jason Biles was my forager up in the forager up in Fife, and he was so knowledgeable. Anybody talking with knowledge about things, and he took us on this most wonderful 2-hour trip around Fife on the water there to look at the seaweeds that we have around the coast there. So we got a whole chapter on it, and he runs these fabulous foraging tours. He's a tall Kiwi. He's got dreadlocks almost to his knees, and he goes around with crocs and grips on the crocs with a basket and scissors and very, very carefully harvesting the seaweed that he would eat. He doesn't take too much. He doesn't strip it off. He showed us how to harvest it sustainably. But he was inspirational. Jimmy Buchan. I mean, how can you not get excited about Jimmy Buchan from Peterhead? And Graham Buchan, no relation, but he was another chap I met. He has a boat, and his daughter, Ella Rose, she is out there with him, and they're prawn fishermen. And we went on into his boat, and we have a wonderful Jimmy got me the langoustines. We went onto Graham's boat and we cooked the langoustines when we were on the quayside and peeled them that he landed. And he was another person that was excited about the industry. They all, they wouldn't be doing it. It's such a dangerous industry. They wouldn't be doing it if they didn't find a huge amount of love and enjoyment for it.
My next point, I was going to ask you, how do you balance the storytelling side with the hard facts, keeping it accurate but still engaging? But saying that, asking you to balance the storytelling, my view, and I've said it to many people, there's nobody can tell a story like Jimmy Buchan.
Oh, he's fabulous, isn't he? He is. He's got that little cheeky look. He is a great storyteller. One of the reasons I really struggled was because I went back I wrote my copy after each visit and then went back and thought, well, I need recipes, because the recipes obviously a key part of the book. We've got over 60 recipes with beautiful images that we shot and did all of that in London at Steve's studio. And he did the most beautiful job. I look at them, and I've never done a book where I've got a recipe next to every recipe, a photograph, I should say, next to every recipe. I've never had that before, so it was a real treat. The challenge for me was to try and explain enough, but in 340 words. And I'd send it over to the publishing house, Merlin Unwin, who published this, and they started editing it. And of course, I then had to reread and think, well, has anything been edited out that we should have put in? And there was lots of toing and froing. And once they'd done it, I then sent it off to a number of my experts. So quite a lot of people from Seafish, they all looked at it and said, yes, we're happy with that. And they may have picked up a couple of things where things might have been lost in translation. I had Dr. Lynn Gilmore. She is in Northern Ireland. She looks after Northern Irish fishing over there. She was with Seafish, but she has a doctorate in seaweeds. So she looked at and gave me lots of advice about the Latin to do with the anywhere that was misspelt and that sort of thing. But I was heartened to think there was very few changes they wanted to make, but it was making sure that the story was correct and joined up once I'd written it right way through to the end of the book. And that was a challenge, because, I mean, how can you put 350 words or 340 words with one species of fish and say what you need to say about it? Very difficult, but it does just highlight the fact that we've got these fish swimming around, around our coastline.
Have you things like recipes, tips, or little-known traditions in the book?
Oh, yes. One of mine was how to eat a kipper, because kippers are in my smoke section. So my way of being able to get herring in there was talking about kippers. And of course, I've got Manx kippers, which are my absolute favourite. I've actually reverted back to some of the information of McFisheries. They have in one of, I think, the 1938 book, they tell you how to cook a herring or a kipper in your house without making the house smell, which I thought was, people, it's a great question. So I gave tips on how to make sure your house doesn't smell, and that was my own thoughts about now. How you make sure that we also show them how to take kipper off a bone and to get the most meat out of it. Because people look at it and go, oh, it's too many bones. There's a lovely man down in Hastings called Trish Hamilton. He's a retired fishmonger, and his dad used to tell him that a herring has 365 bones, and I haven't counted them all there, but he keeps telling me that there are that number. And but how do you get rid of them? Because of course our complete obsession in the UK is don't want bones, don't want skin, don't want eyes. So we get these little fillets. So with a kipper, I said to people, eat it with bread. So if you've got a little bit of bone, it'll get taken down the hatch. It's a challenging one. We're becoming more and more demanding. The one thing isn't in the book, because I hummed and hawed about this, was there's no preparation techniques. I've done lots of books where it shows cutting, and I felt there's so much stuff online on how to cut fish. And I think very often trying to show somebody a book is much easier to see it on a screen. Sea fish, you've got a great range of different videos on how to prepare something. I did a breakdown of crab. I did a breakdown of cuttlefish and squid in there. I talk about making shellfish stock and a beautiful photograph of shellfish stock, and there's also fish stock and the differences between the two and how you make a good stock, but no cutting. No, it's not true. Pin boning and skinning was about as much as I did, but I felt that there wasn't room for it, and I felt it was more important things to talk about. So at the end, there's a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor, I think is the expression, and I've read it through several times, the book, and I'm hoping I'm going to go read it again, and I'm not going to think, oh, that should have been explained differently. And for me, the other one was dealing with live crab and lobster, because there's so much discussion at the moment about how that needs to be done with, in a humane way. And I didn't want to get involved in that when they're still having discussions. I want to support the industry. So what I've actually told people to do is actually go to someone and buy a cooked lobster or buy a cooked crab, rather than trying to address it. And I've said, for updates, go online to find out, any legislation, any updates on how to do it. Because a lot of people that come to me would never want to have to deal with some live shellfish, apart from obviously mussels and things. So I've not skirted around it, but there was reasons why I've not included it.
What do you hope people take away after reading this book? Chefs, home cooks, or just anybody who loves seafood?
I hope I open it up and go, wow, what a fantastic industry we've got in the UK. How can we support the fishermen? How can we support the processors? How can we support fishmongers? How are we going to... That's what I want people to do. The other thing for me with this book is that the publishers are very keen that I have my own voice, and I've never actually written a book that has my own voice in there. So there's quite a few of my little stories to do with going shopping. I remember going shopping as a child and buying a sort of little tubs of pickled mussels and pickled cockles, and talking about how I used to sneak those into the shopping trolley. Another time, there's photographs of me and my brother on the River Findhorn, that's where he lives, and stories about going fishing as a child, and the first thing I ever caught was an eel. It's all these different things. I've interjected lots of my own personal experience. So part of me feels like I put my head above the parapet a bit, just talking about personal experience. And, and I hope that comes across as where I've got my enthusiasm for the industry. And as I said, it's the first time, Jim, that I've actually been able to say this is where I got it from and this is what I've done, or even stories about other people. And so it's a little bit of a storytelling, not in quite so eloquently and industry as Mike Warner does. He's brilliant at it. But it's my story of going around the coast with Steve, what we loved, and what a wonderful industry we have. I'm just so excited.
Well, I think that's fantastic, because what you said here is your story, but it's your book, and it needs to be your story, and I think that's fantastic.
Well, I hope I've displayed it, and I hope I've covered it in enough detail. I think the worst thing for me is right at the end, I was thinking, what about all the places I didn't get to? There's the fabulous Ian Whiteman up in Scotland who's doing those wonderful things with langoustines. There was, I didn't get to Lowestoft. Shame on me, I didn't get to Brixton, but you've got Mitch Thompson and the team down there. And I've written about, talked about, I didn't get up to Shetlands. I've never been to Shetlands. I want to go and have a look at the markets there. All these different things. I want to go to Stornoway, all these different things. But you suddenly realise it takes a while. It costs quite a lot of money to get to these different places.
Yeah.
So I literally feel I've taken this massive iceberg and I've chipped a couple of little ice chips off the top to create my own vision of it. And I just do hope it's, I do, you know, it goes back so many hundreds of years, and I just would love to see it progressing and people doing listen.
Shetland is very much an area that still has its traditions and its food culture. It's
What was that, Jim? I didn't catch that.
Shetland, sorry.
Oh, Shetland, completely. Well, I did a lot of research online about these places and got some of the information, and I cook Shetland. We've had a lot of mackerel. I want to get some wolfish, and a lot of that comes from Shetland. So a lot of the fish that I buy is Shetland landed, and that comes into Billingsgate Market. So hopefully I'll get an invitation. Either that, or we don't like you, CJ. You've not been, and you've not promoted us enough. But you know, I've done as best I can. Finally, Jim, the book is actually dedicated to all the people that are around the UK who are in the industry. And I really understand is how, and I would particularly focus on this with Kenny McNab, is, you know, it's creating an industry and it's creating an income for a lot of people, particularly in the coast. And one of the things that I came across as another thing was they were saying that a lot of these people are struggling to get people to come into the industry. Kenny McNab has got a great initiative up on that coast, the west coast of Scotland, where he is taking young people and going through all the training they have to go through. Because if you want to go out on a boat now, you have to tick all the boxes and go through all your health and safety at sea training. And it's expensive to do it. And then, you know, you've done the training, you then go on a boat and you're seasick and you might not want to go back. So, you know, he does that training. He looks really successful at it. I'm really excited to hear. But anybody that goes to sea and doesn't suit them, they've then got the opportunity of working with some of the best salmon farms around in Loch Lomond and Loch Fyne. So not Loch Lomond, I meant Loch Fyne, but you know, that sort of whole area. And I think it's you know, so it's that whole thing of really addressing the fact that it's an industry, it's £1 billion industry. We need to get more people in the industry and supporting it, and particularly coming up through the ranks. At Billingsgate, you know, I've been there for 25 years now, and I've seen companies come and go. And very interestingly, over the last few years, I've seen a lot of younger people coming in and buying businesses and realizing you've got to have a real sort of fire in your belly to do it. But it's good to see younger people coming into the market now rather than people selling up and retiring. So it's that whole thing of trying to encourage the younger generation to see this as a great opportunity. Can I say one thing so you know what I'm like? I know I'm chatting on. I'm in a pretty moment. Sorry.
Sorry. Can I stop you there?
Yes.
Did you hear what you actually said there? Can I say one word?
Oh yes, no, not just one word. There's one little story I want to say. Would you have an opportunity to edit some of this down, because I do know I can talk a lot.
We want to get your passion out there, CJ. It's not what we want to cut. We want to do. It's get it out. Your passion out.
There's just another thing to say. Recently, I've been working in a school in South London, and I've been teaching a food and nutrition course because they're lacking a staff member. And I realised the challenges with young people now. There's a lot of them that have got no interest in doing anything academic, and they're going to pretty much know by 13 or 14 whether that is the case. And there's an opportunity, I think, to go in and obviously not in London, because you're never going to get them out to the coast, but there's an opportunity to get these younger people learning a trade, and a lot of them want to do electricians and apprenticeships in that. But there's a great opportunity to be a blockman and cut fish. It's well paid. There's a shortage of it, or appears to be a shortage of it. Certainly when I've been around the country, they were struggling to find people. And I think the industry has got an opportunity there in schools. And I've set up a program, I'm hoping that's going to be funded, where I'm going to go into a school or a few schools in the Barking and Dagenham area and say, right, come and learn how to be a fishmonger for the day. And I'll get them in, I'll handle some fish, which they've never seen before. And I want to get them doing something really practical. So they're going to set up a display. I'm going to learn how to gut and clean a fish and fillet it, and then they're going to cook it. And I'm hoping that might inspire one or two of them to think that this might be an opportunity for them, which is away from paperwork and it's away from an academic line, but it's a really important skill. And there seems to be a shortage of them, though lots of chefs, but perhaps not so many blockmen going into the industry.
When I was just going to say about going ahead, where do you see the future of British seafood going?
I don't know. I just hope that they're the big speakers, and there's going to be enough big speakers to make that joined up conversation. There's so many people in the industry. Every time I open up another LinkedIn, there's another 20 people who are sustainability gurus here and managing this, that, and the other. So I think with the right way, we've got an industry. It's just a lot of that industry is going abroad, and I'm saying about things sent abroad, but I actually go with Seafish and DEFRA to support some of these industries that are selling abroad. And so my other hat is going abroad and promoting these products. And people that love our fish, but I'd love us to love our fish just as much. So
That's great, because my next point I was going to ask you is what's next after this book?
That's a really interesting one. I've got a new website coming out, and obviously the other thing I'm looking at is the closing of Billingsgate at some stage. The merchants want to move into a new site, and so there is going to be a new Billingsgate. I know that they're working towards that. It's very confidential at the moment, but I'm also by 2028. I should be able to allow to draw my pension, my state pension. And I think my husband, I live in the country and I've got a little small holding down here, and I'm thinking that I would probably like to perhaps not be so mad and driving up to Billingsgate at the crack of dawn. I don't do it every morning now. I've been doing that for the last few months. So I'm having to sort of open up and see where I'm going to go next. There might be an opportunity to update this and do all the species that didn't get mentioned. I didn't talk about John Doran, I didn't talk about grey mullet or red mullet, all these different species. I'd like to see more conversations about it. There's a great conference coming up about seafood consumption at Fishmongers Hall in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm going to attend, and I'm really interested to hear about it. It's obviously about what we eat generally, and Billingsgate, we have up to 150 species of fish coming from all around the world, as well as our own locally landed stuff. So it's, I don't know, Jim. I just have to see what happens. I'm just hoping to keep myself going. And as I said, I've got a new website which is going to be promoting some more courses. And on a Saturday, I'm going to be certainly from December onwards, I'm going to be promoting a Great British Seafood Revival cook-off. And hopefully people who've been on my courses before would be happy to come in and get a book and work with some species that are in the book and do some cooking from that. So that's going to be, I've got an opportunity to use the kitchens at Billingsgate for a bit longer. Until they get the bulldozers come in, but that's hopefully 2 or 3 years away, 3 or 4 years away even. So I'm head down, continuing working and learning more and waiting for an invitation to go to the Shetlands.
Brilliant.
And I need to go and see you soon as well. I haven't been to Scrabster for a while.
Well, you'll be more than welcome there. Here, CJ, we'll just go over a few quick fire prompts with you. What made you think, I need to write this book?
My kids and the kids that I work with on a day-to-day basis, and the lack of knowledge. You go into Waitrose, a fabulous counter there, and you're dealing with people who are really interested. What they're eating, they cook and they really enjoy meal from meal. But I'm working with a lot of people who just eat to survive and eat to live. And I just wanted to join those two things up in a Waitrose counter. Got wonderful fish on there. Be great to see them adding a few more things in, but they're training their counter staff carefully. And I think it would be, it's I could be careful here, but there's definitely a sort of a social divide here, I think, of people eating more seafood. My husband was going on about it earlier on today. I live in an area in Kent where people are queuing for fish and chips. They love their rock, which is, as you know, dogfish. They still love their cod and haddock. It's still the favourites. It would be lovely. Sorry, I'm just thinking of other things. It would be lovely to add another 6th or 7th species onto the list of the top 5. That's what would be good. So cod, haddock, salmon, tuna, prawns. What else can we add to that? We got so much farm bass, great, but that's imported. What can we add to that to get people trying a little bit more and add that to the next thing? So in 10 years' time, can we add a 6th and 7th species onto that list? Possibly.
In your next book?
Next book, well, perhaps we should say Great British Seafood Revived. That would be fantastic. I don't know. I'm such a tiny little cog in such a massive, massive wheel. But I do like to just wave my banner every so often and say, what else we can do. And there's so many people that have got great opportunities and some that can talk and talk the talk and talk academically about these things, great knowledge. There's lots of things, but so I'm focusing on my Building to Gate people now, and people come on my courses and my school kids. That's my focus, I suppose.
Did you feel you found any hidden gems in the British seafood world that maybe people have completely forgotten about?
That's a really good one. I think Megrim and Witch were the two species I've started working with much more. Most people I say Megrim to, they've never heard of it. Cornish sole. Oh yes, it must be a member of the sole group. So we name things, and there's another blip. Is it? We've got all these odd names for things. I mean, who thought of calling pollock? I mean, it's just not a terribly sort of enthusiastic name. Coley is sold as safe. That's a little bit better, but Coley and pollock. So many people said, "Oh, we used to give that to cats." Well, they might well have done giving it to cat, but it's good quality. We all know it's fabulous. So I'm just trying to think. There's so many different things, Jim. I just feel excitement for it.
Was there a story during your research that you would almost say blew your mind?
So many of these wonderful stories. I'm trying to think. I always hear little things all the time. I've got a little story about Tush Hamilton down in Hastings. He's in his 80s now, and he was out at sea with his dad when he was just before he left school. And in those days, they used to catch monkfish along the coast, and he gets very upset. He said it's not monkfish, it's anglerfish. We should be calling it monkfish, but it's marketed under monkfish. But down in Hastings, they used to call it kettlemar. Have you ever heard of that expression? Kettlemar? No. Well, he said that they used to occasionally catch it, and he has a lovely story of going out to sea one day, and they pulled in their nets. And there was a big, big monkfish or anglerfish at the bottom of the net. And they lie at the bottom of the net with their mouths open. And in comes they just devour all the little Dover soles and the slip soles are coming in. And he was told to take the monkfish out, open up the jaw, anglerfish, open up the jaw and make sure that they hadn't lost any of the very valuable Dover sole. And during that process, the monkfish, which had a big wide mouth, snapped shut onto his boss's boot and bit into the boot, and they couldn't get this monkfish to open its mouth to release the boot. Yeah. They came to shore. The boot was extracted, and the next day when he went to sea, the boot had holes in it because the teeth were so sharp in the monkfish. And I said, "Where's it get the name kettlemar from?" And he said, "Well, take it home." Nobody wanted it because in those days it was would end up in a cat flat box. Nobody thought monkfish had any value at all. So they take it home and say, "Put a kettle on, Ma. I've got a nice fish." So that's what they think the name comes from. That's my little story.
Well, any local traditions or recipes you'd love people to try at home?
All around the country. When we were in Scotland, my favourite thing is Cullen skink. And when we were travelling around from Aberdeen to Fraserburgh, across to Inverness, down to Fife, and then when we went to Tarbert and Oban, every place we went to, I had to try the Cullen skink. Skink, as you know, is a soup. Cullen from Cullen. I did a little bit of research into that, and I tried every single one, and then I created a combination of all the ones I like the best, which is really nice and creamy and packed with smoked haddock. So that for a tradition up there, every restaurant has it. It can't, just Cullen skink, great. But if you've never tried it before, you might be thinking, not sure about that, but it is the most delicious thing. There's so many traditions.
I'll send you a recipe and try it. It's served it a lot when we had the Captain's Galley. And I felt it was partly Cullen skink and partly taken from the New England clam chowder. So it is using the smoked fish and all that from the Cullen skink, but adding some of the ingredients from the chowder as well.
Excellent. So would you have cube potatoes in yours? Chunks of potato?
Yeah.
Well,
also I would put mashed potatoes to thicken it.
Well, interestingly, I think this is my comfort food. Is some mashed potato, poached fish, and then just poach the fish in milk, and then beating the milk into the potato and just adding. And I very often put a bit of spring onion or leek in there or chives, and it's just the ultimate comfort food, isn't it? I can't get smoked haddock at the moment. There's a bit of a shortage at the market. They're not it's difficult to get hold of things. So. Be gentle with our seas, and try new things. That will be my big focus for lots of people to think about. And just trying, if you look at all these fish that are available at Billingsgate, you could have a different fish. You don't need to have cod more than once a year if you go around and choose all the different fish that they're getting your 2 portions of fish every week. Cod might feature twice because there's so many other things to try.
If you could change one thing about the seafood industry tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh, my goodness me. I think it would be people listening a bit more. All the fishermen who are trying so hard, banging on a drum, trying to get people to listen. Far be it from me, actually, because I feel as I said, such a small cog in such a massive wheel. But I think that whole thing of joined up conversations and our government actually listening and being able to do something about it rather than listening and then perhaps not. I'm not a political animal, but I think that's where things get stuck, is my understanding anyway.
And what do you hope someone, would you say, takes away after reading the book?
What a beautiful country you have, and what a fantastic industry. If you open up the first page and you open it up, it's a beautiful picture that Steve took when we were walking along the beach just outside Fraserburgh, between Fraserburgh and Aberdeen. And what a beautiful, diverse country. We've seen the most amazing things. People travel abroad, but you don't need to. We have everything here. It just does, I think, for me, is a lot of traveling up and down the country. But what a beautiful country we live in. And we need to make more of for food security and everything else, we need to make more of what we've got and support the sustainable processes that so many fishermen are trying to adopt.
Admirable. CJ, where can people follow you online? And what's this new website you're opening? What's that address?
Oh, that's a really good one, actually, because at the moment I'm under CJ Kent Seafood, but of course it's Kent because I live in Kent. It's going to be a new one, and it's going to be CJ on Seafood. And the guy that's developing my website, we're hoping that's going to go live in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It'll be CJ on Seafood. And at the moment, I have CJ Kent Seafood or www.kentseafood.com. And on that just displays all the courses that I'm running now, but that's going to be replaced very, very shortly with a new website with all the images and a much more pared down selection of courses. And I know things that I feel well and some things that I'd love to encourage people to try a bit more of. So,
Thank you, CJ. I think that's a good time to fold up, and I would say thank you very much. I love your passion, and I'm looking forward to buying your book. I really am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It drives my husband mad. He almost glazes over when I start talking about fish and seafood. So excited about it. And there's so much to learn, Jim. This is the thing. I always say to people that a recipe is a starting point, not a destination. So you pick up the recipe and go, I don't like that, but I might add this. But also, you never stop learning. And I think in this industry, you get to the stage where you think you know everything there is to know about a subject. You need to change your career. And I learn something new every single day. From my kids talking about the lips of a mussel, it's little things like that sort of adds, the spice of life with all these different things. And I learn things new, and I'm excited to learn new things and keeping an open mind. So, thank you.